Very welcome to this episode of Radio Espial. Ciaran and I are doing something just a little bit different this time. Instead of a single case timeline, feature and analysis, we're going to bring you recent news and updates on 4 previous cases that Radio Espial has covered. Now these 4 cases are Annie McCARRICK, Brian Kinsella, Tina Satchwell and Emer O'Loughlin. Yeah, I think we haven't done this kind of thing before, really.
No, because a lot of podcasts out there, they'll do the episodes and all, like, and fair play to them, but there's not always a lot of follow-up episodes. It's something that's kind of lacking, like, in the podcast world.
Yeah. But look, I just felt that there was enough substance in some of the news and updates on these cases to do again. So maybe it's a kind of episode that will repeat again. But we'll see. I mean, we're not going to go with an episode on cases unless there's really something of substance to go with. Now, just on the order of the cases we're doing tonight, because I know everybody's going to say, why did you do that case first? Why did you put that one last? Look, there's no particular order. I haven't even fully decided what the order is tonight, other than us recording this live, and I'll then later decide what way I want to do it. So don't read anything of significance into the order we're going to cover these cases. Starting with one case and ending on another case doesn't mean that the first or the last case is somehow more important than the other. After recording this episode and during the process of post-production, I might just decide, just for convenience reasons, to switch them around. But I'm kind of, at this stage, I have a fair idea how it's going to run, and I'm reasonably okay with how we have it in our live recording here this evening. Incidentally, just for the timeline and the record, Ciaran and I are recording this on the 28th of March 2024, and as you see him there, Ciaran joins us now from Irish Cold Cases and Ireland's Vanishing Triangle. You can find his social media links and his website links in the description of this episode.
Thanks, Mick.
And you're very welcome again, Ciaran. Ciaran, we've done deep dive case analysis and timelines on Annie and the Tina cases, and I think you were on with us when we did the more recent timeline analysis of the Brian Kinsella. The Emer O'Loughlin case, I think of the ones that we've done, is the only one we haven't done a full analysis timeline on, and there were reasons why I felt not to go into that, rather that we just we showed a documentary feature on that particular case.
Yeah, and I think the case is now going to get a lot more notoriety based on that crime call, because the picture and all getting released. So
I definitely would hope so. So we have 4 very different cases spanning 28 years. 3 of our cases are active murder cases, and we have suspect or suspects, those 3. One of them, that of Brian Kinsella, remains an active missing person case, so please remember that. Before we begin with our first case, I want to stress that this episode is not about going into the full details of the cases and rehashing them out as we would normally do in deep analysis timelines. If you want to find out more details of those cases, what I'll do is when we speak about particular individual cases, I'll probably, somewhere up there, you'll probably see a time card. You will also see links to the full timeline analysis in the description. Okay, it's likely many of our subscribers have already watched those video episodes, and look, that's great, that's brilliant, thank you for the support, but the links are there just for reminders. Now we're going to move from this particular scene. I have to get used to this now because I haven't used this before. We're on to our actual cases. Now we're starting with Emer O'Loughlin. Now the Emer O'Loughlin case is from 2005. Like I said, it's classified as a murder active case. just this brief summary. This is all you're going to get. We're not rehashing the whole case. Emer O'Loughlin, 23 years of age, and her boyfriend returned from a dream trip across the world. On the return to County Clare, Ireland in 2004, the young couple decided to save money for a house and a family life together. On Friday, April the 8th, the couple experienced some power supply issues to their mobile home that morning, and Emer asked their adjacent neighbour if she could charge her phone in his mobile home until their power was restored. Less than 2 hours later, her boyfriend received a disturbing call from a local friend that there was a serious fire at the mobile home site. He returned to find the burnt out remnants and ashes of their neighbour's home. Emer couldn't be found in their home. The neighbour could also not be located. Within hours, around 5 p.m, the emergency services sifted through the ashes and human remains were found. The remains were that of Emer O'Loughlin. A post-mortem would later reveal that Emer had been strangled. Her neighbour was identified as a suspect in her murder, and following a bizarre series of events in the coming days and weeks, he, the suspect, attempted to fake his own death and ultimately fled Ireland. This is something some of you, and in fact I think even Ciaran is not fully been introduced to this. This is out of our case database, and this is all of the information that we have on the Emer O'Loughlin case. I'm not going to hold it.
Very well done.
Yeah, if you want to pause it and go through more details, it's fine. It's what we rely on to log all cases. Every case we deal with is logged, and including cases that we'll eventually work to and cover are all in there. Now,
idea.
On Monday, March 25th, 2024, GARDA SIOCHANA and Emer's father and sister appeared on RTE's crime call in an appeal to the public for information on the whereabouts of John Griffin, that was the neighbour, who'd been missing since 2005. He is believed to have critical information in relation to the murder of Emer. In agreeing to take part in the crime call GARDA appeal, the family made it clear that they would only do so if it did include a public appeal naming John Griffin and a request for information on Griffin's current whereabouts. We're going to take an insert here, and this is from the crime call episode on RTE. I think it went out on Monday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And look, please understand, we've already had our ups and downs on the channel. For copyright reasons, I cannot show the actual video, but I have included the audio with still images. So let's take a look at that crime call family appeal from Emer's, I think it was her father and her Emer's sister.
Looking through Emer's sketchbook here, and we've got the self-portrait, and then just unfinished.
Yeah.
An unfinished life and an unfinished lots of blank pages that weren't filled.
Still feels like yesterday. You know, it never goes away, and never will.
Emer was a caring soul. I think she was a gentle soul.
She was made into photography, and whatever she take a photograph in, she could draw.
So yeah, she was always very arty. She was in college in Galway, and she was studying art in college. Emer was living in a place called Ballyburna up in the Burren, so it's right in the middle of nowhere, very, very rural area. She was living up there in a mobile home, and it was just a beautiful place to live. It was quiet, it was away from the hustle and bustle. The day of Pope John Paul's funeral, so the college was shut. The power to their mobile home had been switched off, and her phone was dying, so it was suggested that she go over to her neighbour to have her phone charged. And that was the last time she was seen alive.
The neighbour that Emer went to visit was a man named John Griffin, who lived in a nearby mobile home.
On the 8th of April 2005, at around 2 p.m, a workman arrived to do clearance work on the site in Ballyborna. He saw that a mobile home belonging to John Griffin had been destroyed by a fire, with charred human remains visible inside.
That's all we knew at that point. Emer was missing.
Yeah.
There's been a fire and a body's been found, so that was all that we knew at that point. But straight away, I had absolutely no doubt it was Emer.
Unfortunately, by that evening, it was apparent that the remains were Emer's.
You'd never expect it for your children to go before you. Worst day of my life. Yeah.
John Griffin was soon located at a house in Merview, Galway City, where he was interviewed by Gardaí.
On the morning of the 20th of April, John Griffin was seen boarding a ferry to Inishmore.
He got the ferry to Inishmore using the name John McDermott. At the fort of Dunangissa on the island, a bundle of clothes was found on the cliff edge which matched John Griffin's. Searches were carried out, but in the intervening years, John Griffin has not been located.
The anger, I mean, I've been angry for 19 years. It's fair, I will get upset about my little sister the day that we find the person who did this to her. But up till then, I'm just angry. Angry at a lot of things.
We knew it from the start, like. It would be foul play, like. But to prove it was another thing.
The original post-mortem in 2005 was inconclusive, so in 2010, Emer's remains were exhumed to establish a cause of death.
The conclusion was that Emer had died a violent death, and the case was then upgraded to a murder investigation.
What I want people to know is that you've got a family here in Clare that basically is destroyed. You know, I always live in hope that maybe one day somebody will come forward and maybe one day conscience will prick somebody who knows where the person who did this to Emer is, and, you know, we'll find out a bit of justice for her and justice for us as a family.
Well, Detective Inspector Gary McEntee from Galway Garda Station joins me now. Gary, you're very welcome. Now, we can really see the toll that Emer's death has taken on her family.
That's right, Carla. Emer O'Loughlin's murder occurred on the 8th of April 2005, which is nearly 19 years ago. At the time of her death, Emer was only 23 years of age and had her whole life ahead of her. Her family's still struggling to come to terms with her death, and they're seeking the public's assistance. They're hoping for justice for Emer, and hopefully this justice will give them the closure that they deserve.
Now, we heard about John Griffin in the piece there, Gary. Tell us more about why exactly you want to speak to him.
We believe that John Griffin was the last person to see Emer alive. He disappeared at the early stages of our investigation and was last seen on Inishmore Island. We believe he is still alive. We've never received a missing person report in respect of John. And despite extensive searches, we've never been able to locate him. We believe that he has information that would be crucial to our investigation.
OK, so this was almost 20 years ago, Gary, so remind us of his description.
Well, John Griffin would now be 56 years of age. He's 5'11", described as thin build. He's balding and he would regularly be seen wearing a beard. He would have a very distinctive tattoo on his throat as well, described as the Eye of Horus, an Egyptian-style tattoo. He's also known by his nickname Fozzie.
Now, how else might people be able to help tonight, Gary?
Well, tonight, Carla, I want to directly appeal to anyone who may have information in relation to the murder of Emer O'Loughlin to please contact us. We may have spoken to you previously in relation to our investigation, but due to the passage of time, you may feel that you're in a better position now to contact us. I want to reassure people that any information that we receive will be treated sensitively and with compassion.
OK, well, here's hoping tonight's appeal reaches the right people. Gary, thanks very much.
OK, Ciaran, any thoughts on this before we move on to our next case update?
Yeah, well, one of the first thoughts that jumped out at me when I read through the case was like, if someone's going to kill themselves by jumping off a cliff, why would they take their clothes off first? They're not going to come back for them, are they? That just is like obviously someone intentionally leaving a marker.
Yeah, it's sort of it's
very intentional.
It's kind of caricatured. What was that BBC series, Reggie Perring sort of, caricature of somebody who wants to disappear and fake their own death. So you take all your clothes off, but actually in reality, in a case where somebody decides this is the end and this is how I'm ending it, they don't take off their clothes and head into the sea. It just, might take off a jacket, leave a handbag or a wallet or possessions like that. They don't need them where they're going. But ultimately, it's a bit of a caricatured idea, and I think this is the idea of people who do fake their own death and try and disappear, think that this is the kind of thing that you must do, and it's a red flag straight away to police. That hang on, there's something more here.
And also, I wonder, and then how did he get off the island? You'd think he'd be seen, because there is obviously a ferry that goes. But I
would say, as far as I know, there's what's the name of the island?
Inishmore, isn't it?
Inishmore is a. There's there are small. I've been on them back and forward to the islands as well on the holidays. They're small sort of ferries that might carry 10, 20, 30 people at most. You go across. But we can't exclude the fact that to avoid being seen or spotted in his disappearance, that he maybe with someone local, fishermen, pay them off, organise that he would escape through being across your little yacht or your little boat, and that's the way he got away without being tracked. Who knows?
He could have taken a boat out with him, left it, came back, put the clothes there, and then went back to the boat, some little tiny fisher boat or fisherman, the little boats they have down there.
Or rented, paid somebody just to borrow their boat, and that person is not coming forward to offer information that's what actually happened.
So I'd say, and then the obvious one onto the mainland, up to the north, and then into Britain, and then into Europe.
The UK could have been Wales, could have been Scotland, could have been I don't think it generally wouldn't be direct. Generally Wales or Scotland will be the routes.
Going through the north of Scotland will be probably shocking. Well, hopefully though, what did he say? I think he's in his mid-50s. They said so. Hopefully he'll surface one day somewhere.
Well, that's what we'd like to think, that he will surface. And look, there's the image of him. Incidentally, I want to say this image has been pointed out to me because we did have some questions. That image was actually taken by, as far as I know, I'm almost certain, Gardaí themselves when they were interviewing him, and he had quite some of the run-ins with Gardaí, including not long after the incident with the fire at the the campsite. He then holed up in I don't know, it was a tourist area, barricaded himself into I don't know, it was a derelict house or a tourist area house, and started hurling stones at the Gardaí when they asked him to come out and just calm down and talk to them.
But he seems like the type that could probably live off the grid,
very much so. I think
hopefully someone grasses him up or something anyway.
And we get something for it. But look,
it's going to get a lot more publicity now in case
I would hope so. Look, that's all we have for you on that case. We're going to move on to a case we more recently covered. This is a case of a sad case. This is a case of Brian Kinsella, who went missing in 2021. So it's an official missing person case, and it's active. So just on the brief summary of Brian Kinsella went missing from his family home in Greystew Heights in Waterford, Ireland, on the 17th of November 2021. He told his parents that he was heading to a phone shop to have his new device looked at after having problems with it. This was just after 9 a.m. He was due in work at 12 p.m. at Musgraves Cash and Carry, where he worked for his daily shift. He never turned up for work, and soon it was established that he also never visited the phone shop in Waterford. Now, he was last seen on CCTV near Grattan Quay in the town at 10 minutes past 10 a.m. that morning. No trace of him or the reasons behind his disappearance were ever discovered. He was reported missing on the day of his disappearance at 7 p.m. An extensive local land and sea search began soon afterwards, lasting many weeks and months, right into February 2022. His case soon captured local and national media attention in Ireland due to the efforts of his family and friends. To this day, in 2024, substantive leads have never emerged. Subsequent sightings of him in the area and elsewhere afterwards were eventually eliminated. Now, this is the only recent case Ciaran and I covered. In fact, it was right at the start.
Yeah.
I actually checked. It's actually early March.
Yeah.
So I won't pretend we haven't had a great deal of unanswered questions in this case.
No, it would be more just what we were kind of saying the last time, that just for more kind of information you would hope will come forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is recent. It's only like 3 years this year, so.
Yeah. Okay, so what I want to do is, because it's a recent case, these are just some brief highlights. I think it's about a 4 or 5 minute clip. It's just clips out of that recent episode that we did. Again, there's a link up here somewhere. If you can't find it and it's not there, look in the description. The full timeline of the case is there. So let's take a look at those highlight clips from that episode when we covered in far more greater detail Brian Kinsella's missing person case.
Brian is 29-year-old son of ours. Lovely boy, very popular. Loved to, was great for walking on the Greenway, riding his bike on the Greenway.
He had bought a new phone the week before, and he had said that he was going down to the phone shop. There was some little thing wrong with it, and he left the house at around 9 o'clock, and sort of that was the last that we had sort of seen him on that particular morning. He didn't have any breakfast either. He was to be in work at 12 o'clock, and he never contacted anybody to say that he wasn't coming in.
We've established that Brian intended to visit Ayr on Barronstrand Road, Waterford, his service provider. We also noted an adjacent shop called IT Star, which does computer and phone repairs. We have verified that Ayr found no CCTV footage of Brian on the day of his disappearance in their shop branch. We have no information on IT Star beyond that on Garda Síochána stated they checked with all phone shops in the Waterford area. If you wanted to go by bus, you would literally have to get 3 buses. It would be you would walk there quicker than waiting for buses, to pick them up. There might be maybe a more direct route from Waterford City directly from that phone shop. But again, we don't believe that Brian ever got there anyway.
I suppose a bike is the only other thing, isn't it?
Of course, a bike would be one obvious manner.
Looking where he lives in that place is...
We know there's a car in the garden, but we don't know whether is that his father's white car. I think it's a Peugeot, or whether it was his. I don't even know, literally, and we're going to touch on this later in the tunnel. I don't even know whether Brian Kinsella had a driving licence or whether he drove. Where do you go with this? This is a difficult case to reach any definitive conclusions on. But we are missing a wealth of history and personal information on Brian prior to those events. It's like Brian existed publicly from the day of his disappearance, and not before. There's a reasonable argument to be made that that is the way it should be, and privacy of a person and family should be respected. I understand that. We're still left asking, who is Brian Kinsella? And that's never a good thing in a missing person case. His light in life should shine bright, and he needs to be back with his family. There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever to date that Brian Kinsella was the victim of harm or threat that somehow led to his disappearance. Working, that's our case file on Brian. Again, up till when we did that episode, we had very limited information on Brian himself, what we knew about Brian. If I'm not mistaken, Ciaran, and your own thoughts, I found that as far as information and answers or some idea what direction we're going in, that was one of the most difficult cases to cover. For understandably personal reasons, but also for just the lack of detail that we had.
Because I remember at the time we said there was absolutely nothing we were holding back on this case. We were actually like trying to nearly fill in information, like, you know. So, but and also like it just kind of dawned on you. What makes it strange that there's even less information is that it was 2021. You know, we've done cases from the 80s where there's actually more information. You know, and in 2021, like your phone, CCTV, etc. You know, dash cams, so on and so forth. Like, it's, it's very And I said the family are entitled to decide, you know, what they want to do.
It's totally understandable, and I respect that. But in one ways, the following information I'm sharing with you that came from the family in some ways makes this case even more baffling. Why we don't have more information on what happened, Brian, that morning or that afternoon.
Yeah, look, now I'm just gonna say something speculative, but like from what I could see, he seemed like quite a decent, normal guy.
Yeah, and that's all the feedback. That's all the feedback.
Addiction or that gambling or anything, you know.
Yeah. Now, look, I want to thank Brian's sister Geraldine. Geraldine did reach out to me just after we aired that episode. And with her help, we've been able to build a greater picture of who Brian Kinsella is and answer at least some of the early questions that we had. What we now do know that we didn't know then was Brian, well, we know Brian was loved by his family and had friends, but we know that as far as activities and pursuits, Brian loved watching and playing darts and snooker. Not just watching it, playing it as well. Active. His favourite football team was Tottenham Hotspur. Brian was actually born in Dublin. He went to primary school in St Declan's National School in Waterford and secondary school in De La Salle, Wicklow. So look, if there's anybody out there in the Waterford area and the Wicklow areas, and suddenly those schools ring a bell with you and you think, hang on a second, I think I bumped into that guy years after we left school, and you have information. These are the things, they seem insignificant, but it's this kind of personal detail that suddenly starts to help trigger people in coming forward and going, hang on a second, I think I've seen his picture. I think I actually met him in the street, around that time. Some of his childhood was spent in Wicklow town. His sisters, younger sisters, Rebecca and Jennifer, they actually grew up in Waterford. So there's two siblings who actually grew up, were born very early and in Dublin, but then the family later moved to Waterford and Wicklow. The family only moved to Waterford in 1998 when Brian was 6 years of age. Brian, even at a later age, always still loved his visits to Dublin, and he missed that sense of visiting Dublin and going to Dublin.
Okay, so you would have been up around Dublin regularly then, yeah?
I don't know how regularly, but Brian was certainly,
yeah.
certainly he liked going to Dublin, and he was, it was not an unfamiliar area, and it wasn't that far away. Brian, we've learned, was learning to drive at the time of his disappearance. This was one of the big questions that we asked, because we couldn't figure out mode of transport, how he got about. His sister Geraldine was teaching him in her car. He was also getting driving lessons at that time. We know, work-related, Brian had a valid safe pass and was fully trained on forklifts. Brian worked obviously for Musgrave Cash and Carry in Waterford. That picture, image that you're seeing there, that's the Waterford Greenways, the area where it's last believe he might have went. Garrity's another siding, St Dominic's Credit Union. You can see Greystew Heights to the left, where he lived. The supposed phone shop that he was going to, which we now know he didn't go to. These were the routes that we looked at, and I think on the bottom there we had Musgrave's Cash and Carry, all the way through Waterford, down to the bottom.
Quite the trek from his house, his job.
Yeah, it's not a journey. It's kind of like a journey that you'd really need, ideally a car, or certainly some decent public transport. And we know that's not always the case in Ireland.
No.
We now know that Brian used his own bike to get to work. He actually owned.
I think we actually we talked about that.
We suspected this might be a possibility. He owned actually a black and blue cycle. Again, it's crucial information. Why did we not hear this from the Gardaí? Have you spotted someone that morning resembling Brian, wearing a cycling helmet, a high-vis jacket, cycling a blue and black bike? Jesus, that's important information. Why didn't we hear that from the Gardaí in this case? From the word go. Now, we did
the CCTV obviously that we watched. He didn't have a bike with him, right?
No, he was walking. He did not take his bike with him on that morning of his disappearance. The expectation was that he was returning home before departing for work. Now, you're probably wondering, what the hell are we looking at here? This is a man called Chris Breffney, and he's at his piano on the beach side, and he's playing a song from his EP called Young Men. That's a video still from the music video. What's this all about? You see, one of Brian's best friends was Chris Breffney. Professionally, Chris is a musician and Irish singer. Perhaps he will be more familiar to you by his stage name, Moncrieff. He released the single Young Men in 2023 about his missing friend, Brian Kinsella. This is what many other friends said about Brian. Now, for privacy reasons, we're not assigning names to the below quotes from family and friends. To quote, "We understand that although a lot of people know and have a great fondness for Brian, there's a lot of people might only know him in passing or don't know him at all. It's important to share the person that Brian is and why he means so much to us. Brian is a son, a brother, uncle, cousin and a great friend. Brian is a person who brings warmth, joy, laughter and a smile to everyone he knows when you enter a room. Brian is always the first person to get up, walk over, shake your hand and make you feel welcome, whether you've known him for years or you've only met. Brian is a person who you can sit with and talk for hours about everything and anything, making reference to some obscure joke that makes everyone laugh and reminiscing about the good times that have already come and gone. Brian is a person who's always providing entertainment. Brian is someone who you knew that if you were speaking to him, you'd come away from the conversation with a smile on your face. Brian is someone who always takes an opportunity to be in the company of his friends. Ciaran, I'll speak for myself. It's important to know all those details, but ultimately for me, those details still don't change the ultimate conclusion that I was leaning towards. But it does highlight how important it is to have some personal details in a missing person case. Only that it beholds Gardaí to support and assist families of missing loved ones to present the wholeness of someone in a case, and also it helps. It doesn't leave a private void. You know, it can create a public void where people will come along and start using innuendo and speculation to replace details in a case.
That's the last thing you want, yeah.
And that's the absolute last thing you want. Again, I want to thank Geraldine for reaching out to us in recent weeks to give us a richer sense of who Brian
really
was.
helped the info she's putting out there, because none of that was out there before about like spurs and darts and all them type of things.
And because we thought, what does this guy do? What? Yeah, and it leaves me. Why wasn't he spotted? You know, he was so well known in the area, so well popular and liked. You know, had friends, and yeah, it's just baffling why we don't have any more information. But look, it is what it is, as I say. That's a tragic case, and that's where we are. And look, listen, I will put that link to the actual Moncrieff Young Men single. You might get more of a sense of this case as well by listening to that song and the lyrics.
Yeah, fair play to him.
Okay, let's move on to our third case of the evening. This is the Annie McCarrick case. Annie McCarrick, 1993. Again, it's a murder. Active case. Brief summary. Annie McCarrick, an American woman from Long Island, New York, went missing under suspicious circumstances in 1993 while she was residing in Ireland. Her maternal and paternal families all had strong roots in Ireland. During her years in Ireland, she still regularly commuted back to New York for short periods and family visits. Her parents also visited Ireland 2 or 3 times a year. Annie disappeared on Friday, March 26, 1993. Her mother, Nancy, had planned to visit her later the following week, arriving Friday, April the 3rd, having just missed her daughter's birthday a week before. Annie rented an apartment in Sandymount and shared it with 2 other female friends, Jill Tomey and Ida Walsh. She had told friends that she'd planned to visit and walk in the mountains in just outside Enniskerry that afternoon. Despite eyewitness statements and unconfirmed reports, extensive ground searches and searches, several reviews of her case over the years, it has now been concluded with additional information in the past 18 months that Annie McCarrick likely never undertook any such trip to County Wicklow that mid to late afternoon. And in essence, previous Gardaí investigations did not fully pursue and exhaust entirely valid evidence and leads that suggested Annie McCarrick's disappearance was far closer to her Sandymount home and an area of South Dublin or South Central Dublin, and she came to harm that evening at the hands of persons directly known to her over several years. 2 suspects are under investigation for her murder. Now, because this is a very sensitive and active investigation, we're not legally able to name those suspects. We can tell you that both suspects are related and knew Annie for several years. Both, on and off, had romantic relationships with Annie. One of the suspects was still secretly seeing Annie in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Again, you can pause that if you want. That's our Radio Espial case maintenance file on the case. On the evening of March 25th, 2024, hours ahead of Annie's 31st anniversary appeal, and after another barrage of media requests for information and disclosure known to us for more than 18 months, when Garda Síochána finally retracted CCTV footage we had long known to be incorrect, used in countless appeals over the years, and somewhat corrected the record by issuing a new appeal. This new appeal removed all references to a visit Annie made to an AIB branch on the morning of her disappearance, a critical piece of evidence that had been used for the past 30 years, without question. No formal reason was provided for its removal from the case appeal the following day.
So Mick, are they saying that she didn't go to the bank in the morning?
They're not saying anything. They just decided, let's not mention it now. Let's just forget that bit and not say anything.
That's a bit odd, for the want of a better word.
Yeah. Now, privately, I've been told, yeah, there was a mistake.
Okay.
It was incorrect. That CCTV footage should never have been used to prove that Annie was in the bank that day. It was not from that date.
But she did go to Quinsworth, right? Because the receipt
She went to Quinsworth, which is the backfall for the police now. So I'm going to explain that. On March the 26th, 2024, last Tuesday, just gone, Gardaí opted not to conduct a formal in-person conference appeal with the press at Irish Town Garda Station, as they had done the previous year on the 30th anniversary. And we all knew why. Instead, they went with a written press statement update. You probably can't see that because of the size of it. If I think of it, I'll put a link to it. You can go to the Garda press office and Garda website and you can see it. And there was pretty limited TV news coverage, surprising for a case of this level, and one that sometimes every few months never seemed to be out of the news headlines and countless documentaries. This following news piece is from last year. I want you to pay attention to notice how the erroneous CCTV and the misleading timestamp was still being used without question on the Irish national airwaves and referenced as an active visit to the AIB Sandymount branch at, supposedly, to quote, shortly before 11 AM on the day of disappearance. So what I'm first showing you is an insert from RTE News. Now this is March 2023, that's a year ago, when the in-public appeal was made. So let's take a look at that.
The investigation into the disappearance of Annie McCARRICK 30 years ago has been upgraded to a murder inquiry. The American woman who lived in Sandymount in Dublin was aged 26 when she went missing in March 1993.
This is the last confirmed sighting of Annie McCarrick, the AIB Bank on Sandymount Road in Dublin on March 26, 1993, the day she went missing. The then 26-year-old from Long Island in New York lived in St. Catherine's Court in Sandymount and had been working as a waitress at the Courtyard restaurant in Donnybrook and Café Java on Leeson Street. Today, the investigation team at Irish Town Garda Station upgraded the missing persons case to a murder inquiry.
Having reviewed all the information that's available to us at Irish Town Garda Station, that we are satisfied that it's more likely now that Annie came to a foul demise, and that's why we've upgraded it.
Most people now think I'm Irish, but then...
To coincide with the 30th anniversary on Sunday of her disappearance, Gardaí have also renewed their appeal for information. As well as the last confirmed sighting of Annie McCarrick, there were subsequent reported sightings of her in the Sandymount Green area, as well as boarding the number 44 bus to Enniskerry in County Wicklow. Reported sightings too in Enniskerry village and at Johnny Fox's pub in the Dublin Mountains. But despite extensive searches, no trace of Annie McCarrick has ever been found.
There is a person or persons who have information on the disappearance of Annie McCarrick and her murder who haven't yet spoken to Gardaí.
Annie McCarrick, an only child, would have been 56 last Tuesday. Her father John passed away in 2009 without knowing what happened to his daughter.
Now, the most recent internal Garda review into the case had highlighted multiple areas and, well, fuck-ups. It is what it is, notwithstanding the gross error made on the CCTV timestamp of the AIB Sandymount footage. This is the actual footage. What you're seeing here is not cropped. This is the actual footage. This was in possession of Gardaí. When this was put out to media, purporting to be Annie in the bank on the 26th of March 1993, on the day of her disappearance, surely someone spotted and knew this was not the correct footage, either to be using or to mislead. But all along, Gardaí had been using the following image, cropped, omitting the timestamp, and this was pushed out to media as well, and it was available on the Gardaí site. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, that was removed this week. I don't think.
Very well known picture.
It's an iconic picture of this case.
Yeah.
Boom. Say nothing. Don't talk to anybody. It's gone now. That never happened. And media happily used it, even though they had access to the CCTV footage with the date stamp in it, and never questioned it. Just lapped it all up and took it. In an effort to appease us all, Gardaí released the full Quinsworth 11:02 AM receipt. I don't know why they made such a fuss of this. Jesus Christ, we've had this for years.
Yeah, I thought that's been floating around for a while.
Years we've had this. The Quinsworth 11:02 receipt with the 7 items on them. It's probably not great to read, I can tell you. You've got sugar. You've got I think it's Odlum's flour. You've got fruit and veg. You know, basically Annie paid. Annie was charged 11.14. Yeah, handed over a £20 note and got her change of $8.60.
Right.
Now, I assume that this was an effort to allay concerns and assure us that Annie, despite the AIB bank CCTV footage from March the 15th, 1993, 11 days before her disappearance, they wanted to confirm, but hey, it's okay, Annie was still in Sandymount village on March the 26th, 1993. No one actually disputes that Annie was in Sandymount at the time.
No, sure, her 2 roommates seen her when they were eating.
2 roommates talked to her
in the morning. Yeah,
one of them sat with her on her bed chatting to her that day because they were both heading down to the country to families. You know, no one has ever disputed that Annie didn't go into Quinsworth that morning.
And sure, they found the roommates found the shopping when they came back on the Sunday.
Yeah, so look, we alerted Gardaí to this a year ago, just after the 2023 news appeal, but we got fobbed off and told that, there was some administration error. And what was I told? That the wrong footage, this is from the Garda press office, the wrong footage must have been used, and they still have proof that she was in the bank that day. This Garda, God love him, he clearly had no clue what he was talking about. Bollocks, she was in the bank that day. And if Gardaí have footage with a correct timestamp from March 23rd, 26th, the day of Annie's disappearance in 1993, why didn't they release it last Monday evening when we forced them to correct the record? Now we're going to hear from Superintendent and Detective Tim Burke and Eddie Carroll. Again, note the reference to Annie being in the bank just before 11 a.m. And this is from the Garda press conference in March again, 2024. March 24th, 2023.
Like, Mick, when a case has been, like, you know, it's 31 years now, so the case, it's been a cold case for, what, 29 years or whatever. Like, the guards might as well release as much information as they possibly can.
There's nothing to lose. Exactly. There's absolutely nothing to lose.
If the person was arrested for her murder in 93, they would have served her sentence and been out of prison probably 7-8 years already. So what's known might as well just be put out there in this day and age. You know?
Okay, let's just take a look at that Garda conference from March the 24th, 2023, and then we'll come back with just a little bit more information you may not be aware of.
Annie McCarrick was born on the 21st of March 1967 and was 26 years old at the time of her disappearance on the 26th of March 1993. Annie was the only child of her father John, now deceased, and mother Nancy, who was originally from New York. Annie McCarrick visited Ireland as a teenager on a school trip. Annie's parents describe how she fell in love with Ireland and the Irish way of life, and how upon her return to New York, she indicated her intention to return to live in Ireland. In the late 1980s, Annie McCarrick completed third-level studies at St. Patrick's College in Drumcondra and at St. Patrick's College in Maynooth, before returning to New York in 1991, where she completed her studies at Stony Brook University, New York. On the 4th of January 1993, Annie McCarrick moved to Ireland to live permanently and settled into rental accommodation at St. Catherine's Court, Sandymount, Dublin 4, with 2 other tenants. Annie worked as a waitress at the Courtyard restaurant in Donnybrook in Dublin, and also as a waitress at Café Java in Leeson Street. On the 17th of March 1993, Annie McCarrick attended St. Patrick's Day with friends. Over the next few days, Annie carried out normal working life, socialising in various licensed premises and visiting friends. On Thursday, the 25th of March 1993, Annie was not working but called to her place of work at Café Java to collect her pay. However, her pay was not ready for her and she arranged again to call back on Friday the 26th to collect it. She then visited some friends and stayed for dinner with them. On Friday the 26th of March, Annie spoke to both of her flatmates before they left separately to travel home for the weekend. At approximately 11 a.m, Annie visited the Allied Irish Bank in Sandymount Road in Sandymount to carry out some personal banking. This is the last confirmed sighting of Annie McCarrick captured on CCTV. Annie had made arrangements with some friends by inviting them to her apartment for dinner on Saturday, the 27th of March. Annie was also excited about planning for a visit of her mother Nancy, who was due to arrive in Ireland on the 30th of March 1993. On the 26th of March 1993, there were reported sightings of Annie in Sandymount Green area in Sandymount, reported sightings of Annie boarding a number 44 bus bound for Enniskerry in County Wicklow, and a number of further reported sightings in Enniskerry village and at Johnny Fox's pub. On the 28th of March 1993, friends of Annie were concerned for her welfare. She was not at home on the 27th of March when they called for the dinner invitation, and she did not turn up for work either on the 27th of March or on Sunday, the 28th of March 1993. A friend called to her apartment on the evening of the 28th of March and spoke with Annie's flatmates. Groceries which had been purchased by Annie were on the morning of the 26th of March in Quinsworth on Sandymount Road in Sandymount were left unpacked in shopping bags, and a receipt in the bags confirmed that the date and time of the purchase of these groceries was 11:02 a.m. I wish to confirm that this is the last confirmed activity that we're aware of by Annie McCarrick. Annie was reported missing by a friend on the evening of the 28th of March at Irish Town Garda Station. The missing person report was confirmed by her mother Nancy when she arrived in Dublin on the 30th of March 1993. Annie is described as 5'8" in height, 10 stone, with long brown hair. She spoke with a soft Irish-American accent. And when she disappeared, it is believed she was in possession of a large brown satchel-type bag. And again, photographs of Annie, including a photograph depicting this bag, is provided here this morning. I would now like to introduce you to Detective Superintendent Eddie Carroll, Kevin Street Garda Station, who will continue with the briefing.
Good morning, everybody. An Garda Síochána has maintained an open and active investigation into the disappearance of Annie McCarrick, carried out by a dedicated investigation team here at Irishtown Garda Station. Over the 30 years of this investigation, the investigation team have discovered and collated in excess of 5,000 documents, reports, taken in excess of 300 statements of evidence, retained a number of exhibits. A senior investigating officer has now been formally appointed as to lead the investigation. Myself and the senior investigating officer have recently visited Nancy McCarrick and some of her family in New York. Based on the entirety of the information available to the investigation team at Irishtown Garda Station today, Friday the 24th of March 2023, I can confirm that this missing person investigation has now been upgraded to a murder investigation. This morning, I am making a public appeal for information. I want to speak to any person who met, spoke with, or had any interaction with Annie McCarrick on the 26th of March 1993 or subsequently. There is a person or persons who have information on the disappearance of Annie McCarrick and her murder on or about the 26th of March 1993 who haven't yet spoken to Gardaí, or who may have spoken to us already but are not in a position or were not in a position to tell us everything at the time that they spoke with us. I want to speak with any person who has any information on the large brown satchel-type handbag which is believed that Annie was in possession of when she went missing. I'm appealing to those persons 30 years later. Please come forward and speak to the investigation team. The primary focus of this investigation is the victim, Annie McCarrick, and her family. Annie's father, John, has passed away without knowing what happened to his daughter. Annie's mother, Nancy, deserves to know the truth. She deserves to know what happened to her daughter on or about the 26th of March 1993. She's waiting 30 years for those answers. I and the investigation team are determined to gather all information and evidence available to us to find answers and to bring the matter to a positive conclusion. I have made this commitment to Nancy and to her family. I would urge any person or persons with information in relation to the murder of Annie McCarrick to please come forward to either the investigation team at Irishtown Garda Station on 01666 9600, that's 01666 9600, your local Garda station, or the Garda confidential telephone line at 1800 666 111, 1800 666 111. I appeal to any person who has information relative to Annie's murder not to assume we know and or that it has limited value. Let us make that decision, please.
Okay, so this is what I'm aware of in this case. This isn't the only foxpaw the current active review unit had discovered that was missed by the original investigation team. Will Gardaí be prepared to reveal that tomorrow, I was speaking last Sunday, I think Monday, the early hours of Monday, on Annie's 31st anniversary, will they tell you that for years and years, in the weeks after Annie disappeared, that a uniformed Gardaí conducting door-to-door inquiries in Sandymount Village in the weeks after her disappearance took a statement from a person working in a well-known cafe in the village who knew and recognised Annie on first-term basis? That they had a short conversation with Annie and she was in good spirits that day, March the 26th, 1993. Annie often took visiting friends to this cafe, and the owner had had served and chatted with Annie on multiple occasions. Why was this statement and witness detail taken by a diligent Garda officer during doing his honest job, either completely ignored or briefly examined and dismissed in deference to a host of very dubious, well-meaning...
Sorry, but it's a person that's known to her.
Yeah.
That's given the statement that sees her. What did he say? Regularly? Like,
several times she called into that coffee place.
And she's not an Irish woman. She's a
No,
distinctive
it's
American
very
woman.
distinctive.
It's nobody else. It's just nobody else.
Yeah. But instead, they were all happy to go with these dubious, well-meaning eyewitness reports in Enniskerry and Johnny Fox's pub from people who did not know Annie personally at the time. A critical witness statement ignored and left to gather dust in a fucking ring binder for decades. Lightly because it didn't support the wild goose chase in the Dublin mountains at the time and all the poxy resources that were thrown at it. Why was the discovery of a large brown satchel handbag found at Kylie's pub in Donnybrook shortly after her disappearance by two men doing their citizens' duty, and when the contents were examined, ID cards were found inside with Annie's name on them? The bag was handed in to Donnybrook Garda station. The finder claimed he handed it in and for 2 weeks tried to follow up on it but was never contacted by Gardaí. In subsequent years, the finder would eventually relate this event on a social media page. When it was once again brought to Gardaí's attention, Gardaí claimed that they had no such lost property job log in Donnybrook, and if such an event happened and a satchel bag was handed in, this information was never relayed in the original Annie McCarrick investigation to the detectives. This is the reason why you've heard about this satchel, brown, I think it was a brown, not tan, brown satchel bag on recent public appeals. Why? Well, there's the reason. Because we messed up again.
Yeah, because it was only, I think, I'm fairly sure just the Mirror covered that story. That was it. But it was a vital story, like, and as you said, the ID cards are in the bag, so it should have been taken very seriously.
And if the story was bogus, chase it up and eliminate it. That it was bogus.
Or prosecute
Fine.
them. You can't
And
put
prosecute that
stuff on social
person
media.
if it was bogus. If that person was going on social media supposedly about an event, then find that person and prosecute them for providing misleading information.
Yeah, see, they can't do that because, well, we know why they can't do
Yeah.
that.
Say nothing. Yeah, we know why. Yeah, we know why now. Look, as I say, there are...
And Mick, did you ever get any information if Annie ever attended this pub? Like Donnybrook to Sandymount, it's not much of a distance, is it really?
It wouldn't be that far of a distance.
South Dublin, yeah.
Yeah. No, we have no further information on that. And it doesn't look like it was ever chased up. And this is what the Garda more recent review in the last few months have discovered. Countless errors in the case that have led to where we are. Look,
it's like the ones now, they're kind of building it from anew. They have to kind of
and that's, in fairness, that's the way a Garda review unit should work.
Oh, yeah.
Every time you look at a case, you start again, look at it from afresh again. Okay, we're going to move to our final case now this evening. And this is the case of the murder of Tina Satchwell and the arrest of her husband, Richard Satchwell, last year. I think it was last October. So just again, brief summary. We're not doing a deep dive into this case here.
So this is quite active at the moment. This
is a highly active case. Brief summary. Tina Satchwell went missing under suspicious circumstances in 2017 in County Cork, Republic of Ireland. From St Bernard's Place in Fermoy, Cork, she lived with her husband for almost 28 years, Richard Satchwell, and their two dogs on Grattan Street in the seaside town of Youghal. The couple met when Tina went on a visit to the UK in 1989. Richard moved to Ireland within 10 weeks of the pair meeting. Tina disappeared from her home on Monday the 20th of March 2017. She was last seen in public at a car boot sale with her husband in the town of Carrick-Woohull the previous day, Sunday, 19th of March. Richard was the last person to see her around 10 a.m. on the morning of her disappearance. He stated that Tina asked him to go to the Aldi store in Dungarvan to buy fish and dog food, and when he returned to the home on Grattan Street in Youghal 2 hours later, she was gone. He officially reported her missing on Friday the 24th March 4 days after he had last seen her. Now, Tina's remains were discovered underneath an understairs toilet following a planned search of the couple's property in October 2023, so last year. Gardaí had long had suspicions that Richard Satchwell had not only murdered his wife, but concealed her body somewhere. A tip-off from a construction worker carrying out work in Grattan Street at the couple's property provided them with enough evidence to finally obtain a warrant to force a full forensic search. Within hours, they found Tina's remains, and Richard Satchwell was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife. While the case is still pending trial, it has quickly become one of Ireland's most gruesome and notorious husband-wife murder cases since the murder of Rachel O'Reilly by her husband, Joe, in 2003. Both cases bear the same hallmarks of a killer who, for a time, courted media and employed a mix of deception and innocence in an effort to evade the reality of what they had really done. On Tuesday, March the 26th, 2024, Richard Satchwell appeared before Clonmel District Court in Tipperary. Due to the gravity of the crime, Satchwell had been remanded in prison, denied a bail application last year, and awaited a final decision by the Irish DPP, Department of Public Prosecutions, on exact charges to proceed with, and constant delays in the serving of a book of evidence on him. He had been incarcerated for 5 months. In early March this year, Judge Brian O'Shea warned State Council for the first time that he was ready to strike the case from the courts if a book of evidence was not served within 14 days.
Like, imagine that happened.
Yeah,
oh my God.
it's just how the Gardaí and the DPP got themselves into this crazy situation is just mind-blown.
No,
However,
if that ever happened, the justice system would lose all reputation if that ever happened. Like, my God.
Now, on Tuesday, just past at 10:07 a.m, Detective Garda David Kelleher carried out that duty, serving of the book of evidence. I'm not even sure how perilous or ridiculous a situation the state or on Garda Síochána realised they were in just weeks ago when they got the warning from Judge Brian O'Shea. There's nothing in this case that should have taken any longer than October 2023 to January 2024. A crime scene with a body, a case laden with CCTV and forensics, and an arrested suspect and a motive. And yet, it had taken 7 years to move from inquiries to a forced and warranted search that should have happened years ago, to a suspect in custody and an impending trial in the Central Criminal Court. During last week's Clonmel court sitting, for the first time since last year, Richard Satchwell did appear in person rather than by video link. This is required and a book of evidence is served. It cannot be just served on the evidence, the defence counsel. The accused must be present. And as with all murder cases, a district court cannot preside and hear a murder case in Ireland. It must be heard and sit at the Central Criminal Court. Now, as of today, Richard Satchwell's next hearing has not appeared on the CCC, the Central Criminal Court's clerk's posted schedule. It should be one of the first CCC sittings post-Easter, so I suspect maybe next week or possibly the following week. The court might not be sitting until the following week.
Well, they're going to want to get a move on with this one because his solicitor is going to start arguing his right to a speedy trial and all, like, on this.
Yeah,
one,
well,
so.
he did argue for bail, but was denied that on the basis of flight risk, and you can understand it. But you could understand it back last November and December, but you didn't have much truck with that come January or February when they start prevaricating, and even up till 2 weeks ago, in front of Judge Brian O'Shea, Kelleher and the other accompanying detective with him actually said, we're not actually sure in that short time span of 14 days we can deliver the book of evidence. It's just unbelievable. Now, last week, the State Council was also requested to hand over all video interview evidence it had. The book of evidence and all pertaining case materials the State has gathered must be made available to the defence before they are required to appear and formally record a plea against all charges made against them. Now, I want to emphasise, despite what you might have heard or read in the media, Richard Satchwell has yet to formally record a plea of guilty or not guilty in the charge of the murder against him. What he said in response to charges put to him during interviews has no relevance whatsoever or carries any burden of admission of guilt. It is something often forgotten, not only by members of the public but the media themselves when cases like this are covered. Sure, they can try and use it against you. That's if a judge decides it's admissible.
Yeah.
Judge Brian O'Shea has dispatched this trial to the Central Criminal Court as a trial by jury. That is a preparation for court clerk calendars. Depending on what plea Richard Satchwell records when we move to a full scheduling of trial with a recorded plea, will tell us the remaining expediency of this case. That is, should Richard Satchwell plead guilty, we move instead straight to a next date of sentencing and victim impact statements from family and friends, together with any defence mitigating circumstances. Should Richard Satchwell plead not guilty, then we move to a more lengthy trial by jury, and the case that will likely last for several weeks, and that may not happen until much later this year or even 2025, when the court clerk and judges decide they have a window to hear a case that could last many weeks.
Yeah, it'd be a while, that one, yeah.
Yeah. Ciaran, any last thoughts on that before we finish up?
Well, it'd be interesting to hear what his defence would be if he's going to plead not guilty.
Yeah, I don't know. Insanity. I don't know. I don't know whether he's just going to say yeah, guilty, and save everyone having to go through the minutiae. Although I know people will argue, no, we want to hear what happened. We want to know how he went about this, and probably more importantly for the Gardaí, how did he get away with this for so long?
Is it the advice he's getting is to plead guilty? Like any right-minded solicitor would advise him to plead guilty.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. But
know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. How far did he get in the media? I don't think he got as far as Joe O'Reilly. Did he get onto the Late Late Show? He was on the radio on RT a lot, wasn't he? But
Richard Satchwell, yeah, I think Richard Satchwell was on the Late Late Show. He did several interviews for Cork Red FM, and also News Talk, some phone interviews, some in-person studio interviews. Yeah, this guy was for the first year and a half. This guy was doing the media rounds an awful lot.
Yeah,
and then that was it. Boom. Yeah. After a year and a half, 2 years, he just stopped. He refused any communication with the media after that.
Yeah, I think. Well, this will be in the media anyway as this one progresses through the courts.
That's for sure. Dependent on, like I said, I'm estimating maybe we might hear more from this case in the Central Criminal Court in Dublin.
It's not gonna some mess up and give the mistrial. That's just,
that's the last thing you want to see with any case for whatever reasons. Okay, look, that's me and Ciaran done. I hope you've appreciated the latest news on this case, these cases, and the updates we've done.
Some vital updates there, Mick, especially with the Brian Kinsella and Annie McCARRICK case in particular. Really well done there.
All right, listen, as always, to you, God bless. Take it easy. And we'll see you on the next episode of Radio Spoil. Happy Easter to everybody over the holiday periods, and thank you for your support. That's it from me and Ciaran.
Thanks.